For some, these old service laneways are a cultural landmark, while for others, this is prime real estate ripe for development. This week we ask what will become of one of Australia's most intriguing attractions. Coming up on the programme, we explore Melbourne's iconic laneways. We're treasure hunting in Chile. We meet the blind man bringing a new perspective to tours of one of England's historic homes. And with a secret solstice in Iceland and a trans-African bike race, Michelle's got her global guide of things to see and do in the coming month. Hello and welcome to The Travel Show. This week we're in Melbourne, Australia. It's second to Sydney in terms of size, but ask any local from around here and they'll tell you it's the country's cultural capital. And it's with culture that we're kicking off the programme, heading into the city's thriving back streets. The city of Melbourne in Australia's southeast is known for its beautiful riverside setting, lively festivals and cafe culture. In the mid-19th century, Melbourne was in fact one of the richest cities in the world thanks to a very lucrative gold rush. And as a result, a network of suitably grand streets were built. But over 150 years on, it's not these broad boulevards that are capturing attention. Away between the main streets are over 180 of these narrow service laneways, some of which are quite grotty. But over the past 20 years they've undergone a transformation and today they offer a unique draw for tourists. With lower rents than the main thoroughfares, these lanes have seen a host of independent art galleries, coffee shops, fashion boutiques and hidden bars taking up residence. And some people are now devoting their days to revealing their secrets.
The tourist has to open its eyes, there's no question. They really do need to look for what the reward, I suppose. But they will see gorgeous cafes, they'll see lovely young designers, and that's the fun part for a tourist. The experience of Melbourne becomes your discovery rather than it being just a map that you follow.
But in recent years, several of the city's publicly owned laneways have been sold into private hands, including a section of Penfold Place, this quiet alley in the city centre. This has prompted fears among some that Melbourne's cultural heritage is in danger of being eroded.
It's the portions of laneways that we've sold in recent years. We've only sold 5 in 2 years. We don't go out there touting it. However, if they can satisfy some very, very stringent criteria, but also bring back value to our Melburnians and our tourists, enhance little spots, little portions that perhaps could do with some extra love and care, then we love it even more.
Each February, these parts burst into life with the St Jerome's Laneway Festival. But there is still concern over the future of Melbourne's back streets.
I don't think there is enough thought into the long-term effect of losing these smaller lanes, irrespective of the justifications that they may not be thoroughfares or they may not be highly desirable lanes. It's just, to me, it strikes me as really short-term thinking, especially when Melbourne has a massive campaign and sells itself to the rest of Australia and the rest of the world as laneway culture. Great, take some money off a developer, but who's that really benefiting at the end of the day? Despite the controversy, these back alleys remain on the cutting edge of Melbourne culture. One of the major attractions in the laneways is the street art, which is everywhere. It's becoming famous and attracting tourists from across the world, including leading artists such as Banksy, who came here and left behind
this little fella. In recent years, an enterprising group of street artists have begun a unique tour, showing visitors where the best pieces are to be found in the city's many nooks and crannies. And just a few streets away at Blender Studios, you can even try your hand at creating your very own masterpiece.
I guess in a way, Melbourne is the largest public art gallery in the world, you know, and for the first time ever, Melbourne is culturally elite at something. You know, like we're number one at street art, or we're certainly in the top. And that's because we have these amazing laneways and we have people travelling to Melbourne to try and get their start.
Some visitors are clearly not as talented as others, however.
So put it down,
Yep.
and then do it in long and thin, sort of
Like quite...
quick. You don't want to do it because it will drip and go under. You want to do it quick and nice and so it holds all the image. Don't get nervous.
Alright.
Now for the reveal. Oh
I've let us down a bit on the
mind
corner.
it.
As night falls, the character of the laneways changes, as countless small independent bars open their doors. Locals say you never know what you'll find down the laneways, and, well, that was certainly true in my case. I stumbled upon a ukulele lesson, of all things, part of a series of fun evening classes held in backstreet bars and cafes across the city. With all of this, it's perhaps not surprising that the people of Melbourne feel so protective of their laneways, especially in these changing times. But with some luck and responsible public management, perhaps this unique nexus of Melbourne culture will continue to be celebrated in another 150 years. Well, if there's one thing that Melburnians love, it's a good cup of coffee. And many around these parts would have you believe that this city serves up the best in the world. So when you come here, make sure to make time to have a cup, and you can judge for yourself. Here are some other things you should know about when visiting Melbourne. The City Circle tram should get you around many of the key sites, and the best part is it's absolutely free. Just hop on and off whenever you fancy. They say you'll get all 4 seasons in one day here. Melbourne's famous for its inclement weather, and there's not much you can do about it. An umbrella and a sense of humour is your best bet. Melbourne is a festival town, and barely a week goes by without one, from food to literature and of course the annual comedy festival, considered among the world's top 3. Check online before you book to ensure there's plenty going on during your stay. And of course, sports are a massive attraction here too. Tennis, cricket, horse racing, and of course Australian rules football are all huge. So if you're not sporty, look ahead and make sure there's not a big event that could make hotel rooms expensive and scarce. Still to come, Michelle's here with her lengthy to-do list in our global guide. But first, let's check out this week's travel update. Pouring your shampoo and other liquids into tiny bottles before you fly may become a thing of the past. A new scanner that can analyse the content of bottles without opening them is being trialled in 65 airports. The system could help reduce lengthy security queues and allow you to travel with bottles containing more than 100 millilitres of liquid. London's first high-rise hotel opened its doors this week, offering views of the Thames, Parliament and the Tower of London. However, a room with a view comes at a hefty price. A suite in the Shangri-La Hotel in the capital's Shard will cost you over $5,500. But that price does include your own personal butler. And finally, tourists in China have been given the chance to walk on the ceiling. Literally. This house in a Shanghai suburb has been completely turned upside down, furniture and all. Hundreds of visitors queued for the chance to pose in the dizzying attraction.
For the past 30 years, the colorful port town of Valparaiso has been renowned for its brash take on partisan expression. Walk down any street and every square inch of it seems covered with graffiti, much of it being political. But I wasn't after graffiti. I was after tangible communist propaganda. After all, artistic interpretations of revolt always kind of seem like a naughty underground history lesson to me. But why Chile? And why now? Well, because 2013 was the 40th anniversary of the military coup of former dictator Augusto Pinochet, a historic moment for the country, and I wanted a piece of that history. The antique flea market in O'Higgins Square had every old-fashioned piece of Chilean history, music, magazines, antiques, everything except the 1970s propaganda I was after. So a vendor directed me to the House of Luis, a jovial Chilean artist who did, in fact, have an impressive collection of old propaganda. Some of it from Chile.
An election for senators and deputies, the year 1941.
Some of it from Russia.
And this is purely Marxist propaganda. It's a poster about Stalin.
All fascinating stuff, but nothing from the military takeover of 1973. And to make matters worse, Luis didn't seem too hopeful that I'd be able to find anything.
Well, we're talking about 40 years or more ago. So practically everything was destroyed.
But he did have an idea.
Perhaps a very little bookshop in front of Congress.
And so it was back down the mountain, all the while thinking of how, in such an outspoken town, especially with the 40th anniversary of revolt, people weren't really talking.
And I had heard this about the Chilean mentality before, a self-confessed shy and well-behaved people, but in a town as loud and brash as Valparaiso, we're talking about 17 universities and 36 square kilometers. I would have thought there would have been some underground, system-hating anarchist just willing to sell anything anti-establishment, but so far, no.
And right next to a mural of Salvador Allende was the man I was looking for.
Sí, ¿cómo estás? Bien.
To say we had found the motherlode of communist Chilean propaganda would have been a gross understatement, and the Che Guevara-loving proprietor, compañero, or comrade, Yuri, had spent thousands of pesos turning his house into a museum.
Donde estamos acopiando toda esa literatura que fue quemada a partir del 11 de septiembre de 1973 por la dictadura militar fascista, y que hubieron compatriotas que guardaron, escondieron libros, revistas, diarios.
Unfortunately, though, compañero Yuri's propaganda wasn't technically for sale, at least not to non-party members. Communism and capitalism were never very good bedfellows after all. But I was able to make out with a few old magazines featuring the previous dictator on the cover. Not exactly propaganda, but it was as close as a non-communist was going to get.
And when you consider the day I had, combined with being able to spend time with the comrade inside his museum, I dare say that's the best treasure I could have found.
Stay with us on The Travel Show.
A little later, we meet the blind guide, who says sighted people are missing out when it comes to seeing the past.
Hello, this is my global guide, destination highlights, insider buzz, and top tips on where to go and when to go. I'm Michelle Yana Chan.
When the marimba rhythms start to play, dance with me.
First, if you like a bit of dirt under your fingernails, well, in the UK, the Malden Mud Race happens on May 25th at the Promenade Park in Essex. It's a frenzied 400-metre dash over the mud banks of the River Blackwater. The river has to be at low tide to allow a safe course. And then it's a free-for-all. Many competitors dress up in finery or fancy dress before they're slathered in mud, and thousands come to watch and raise money for charity. Make sure you've some sleep credit before the 72 hours of daylight, which backdrops Iceland's brand new Midnight Sun music festival called Secret Solstice. It's happening in the capital Reykjavik from June 20th to 22nd. The theme is local Norse mythology, and the dates could not be more mystic. When you need to chill out, on site is the country's largest thermal pool, Luadeslug. To South Africa next, where after 4 epic months, the Transcontinental Tour d'Afrique bike race will finish in Cape Town on May 10th. That's after the competitors will have covered 12,000 kilometres from Khartoum, Sudan, through the African continent, spending an average of 12 hours a day in the seat. They'll deserve a cheer as they arrive in the shadow of Table Mountain. In the Netherlands, the Oral Theatre Festival begins on June 13th on the island of Terschelling in the northwest of the country. There'll be 10 days of street theatre, mime, circus and dance among the island's natural landscapes. Stages will be set up on beaches, in the woods, among the dunes, up on the dikes, and in barns, boathouses and an army bunker.
Oh yeah, I gotta roll, can't stand still, got a flaming heart, can't get my fill.
Crossing to Australia from May 16th, the Ord Valley Muster takes place in the Kimberley region, celebrating for a fortnight the culture and landscapes of the country's dramatic northwestern region. Visitors can head off on horseback, following the cattle trails of outback stockmen. There'll also be performances from Indigenous musicians, and on May 24th, the Kimberley Moon Experience is a nighttime concert on the banks of the Ord River. Finally, the Yorkshire Festival in the UK is counting down to the Grand Départ of the Tour de France, the world's largest annual sporting event. Until July 6th, there'll be music, dance, theatre, film and art, including the Tour of Infinite Possibility, where the rock band Hope and Social will journey around the county making music with, well, anyone who'll give it a go. That's my global guide this month. Let me know what's happening in the place where you live or where you love. We're on Facebook, Twitter and email. Until next time, happy travelling.
Springtime in England is a great time to get out and explore the country's rich heritage and history. But what if you were unable to experience its beautiful buildings in a way that most of us take for granted? We travelled to Kent in southern England to meet a man who has his very own way of getting the best out of the past.
My name is Cyril, and I'm a volunteer at Itemot. I got into history when I was a little bit younger, at the age of 10, because I have an accident when I lost my eyesight. In the middle here, there used to be a fireplace.
Fast forward nearly 20 years, and Cyril is now a volunteer guide at this 14th century manor house nestled in the Kentish countryside, bringing his own unique set of skills to the job, guiding visitors around the former home of medieval knights and courtiers to Henry VIII.
This is where the congregation or the master of the house will sit
Although he can't see any of the rooms or artefacts, Cyril uses his other senses to add an extra dimension to his guided tours.
I try to feel what the builders are doing with lack of material. You know, in this day and age, you will leave things as smooth than this, but it's quite rough, which is what I like. Right, we're now going into one of my favorite part of this house, which is the old chapel. Normally, when I come here on my own, I'll leave my office if I'm a little bit stressed with the computer, and I'll come here and stand probably in the middle. It's that sense of peace that I feel. By knowing the layout, I thought it would be more probably damp smell in here, but it's not. It's really fresh, quite yeah, it's just that feeling up that you get. It's amazing that there are a lot of people that gone by without even take a few minutes to feel the room, because it might have not looked attractive like the other rooms, but what this room can give you, nobody get it. They just pass by. If I'm taking people around, that I always point out to them is for them to connect, which sighted people, sadly, they lost that bit. The eyes is always in an hurry to find new things. So you forget the connection of things, the links to things like the floor, the wood, like here, this particular wood, it moves. If most people have time to take that little 5 minutes to feel those kind of things, you will end up going out feeling refreshed, which is what I got when I walk here, you know. Manship of it.
Like any old house, there are always new things to discover.
Is it smooth all over?
It's smooth all over, yeah, everywhere.
It's different, and I never noticed it until today.
Yes. And Cyril hopes his experiences will give people a different perspective on the past.
Well, that's all we've got time for on the travel show this week. Next week,
Henry's off to Hainan in China. With golden beaches and year-round sunshine, this island's tipped to become China's equivalent of the French Riviera. But can it really rival resorts like Cannes or even Bali and Phuket?
so do join us then if you can. And in the meantime, don't forget you can keep up with us while we're out on the road in real time by signing up to our social media feeds, details of which are on the screen now. But for now, from me, Crystal Larwood, and the rest of the Travel Show team here in Melbourne, it's goodbye.